I'll introduce Kiera. And I've just double-checked how to pronounce Kiera's surname, and it's Monaghan. Okay, it's not Monaghan, it's Monaghan. Who is KM Analytics is your business, and you're going to talk to us about Matomo Analytics, the new kid on the block. Got some spiel here. Kiera grew up in Bexhill and went to Park College when it was called Park College.
Yep.
It goes through various name changes, but that very much dates you around the time that I was at college. That's in Eastbourne, for those of you who are not local. You then moved away for 10 years, working in various industries in the analytics field, and you returned to the Southeast in 2018. You're currently self-employed. And I just did a little bit of stalking on your LinkedIn profile, and I saw that you also have a diploma in eyelash extensions.
Yep.
So Brian, I know you're looking for a glow up. Perhaps you can chat with Kiera afterwards. Anyway, Kiera, let's hear from you.
Okay, thanks so much. Hi, I'm Kiera. As just stated, I'm an analytics consultant. So I've had 10 years experience in the industry. I'm currently self-employed the last 6 months. And this talk is called Matomo Analytics, the new kid on the block. So first of all, who in this room has heard of Google Analytics? If you could just raise your hand. So that's nearly the whole room. Thank you. And then, before the title of this talk, who's actually heard of Matomo Analytics? No one. Okay, cool. So I've actually titled this The New Kid on the Block, but that's more because it's actually taken a lot of prominence in the last few years, but it is actually quite old in respect of tech old. It was actually founded around 2007 under the name Piwik. I think that's how you pronounce it. And in 2018, it actually became Matomo, because if you are in the analytics world, Piwik Pro actually still exists as a separate entity. So from 2018 onwards, we had something called Matomo Analytics. Now, Matomo actually translates, it's a Japanese word, and it actually translates as honesty. And this is at the ethos of the company's like ethics, etc., and what they're all about. It's actually an open source tool. And for the most part, there's a lot of functionality that you can use for free. And Google Analytics, there is a free version, but it comes with a lot of stipulations. So we're talking about Google versus Matomo. And this is kind of a story that is as biblical as David and Goliath. We know how big Google is in general, not just as an analytics tool, but as a paid ads and also as a search engine. So when we look at the stats to back this up, so this is from 2004, just 12 months ago, but it actually says that 14 million websites do use Google Analytics as their tracking tool, and then 1 million websites actually use Matomo. So that might be quite surprising if a lot of us haven't actually heard of Matomo. This is worldwide figures. So again, you can kind of see the disparity between the numbers of the two tools. However, the tide is turning, and so there's a lot of things going on in the world, especially in the last 5 years, which means that Google Analytics is taking a bit of a kicking globally. And the first part of that is actually the rise of privacy advocates, which we've seen especially in the European Union. So number one, we have concerns about data ownership. So if you use Google Analytics, that data is actually not really your own. It's actually owned by the company. So it might not be too bad if you're a small business and you're just trying to get out, but if you're actually quite a large enterprise, this would be very concerning about how your data is being stored and processed and mined. So we also have data compliance in the European Union, as most of us might know about GDPR, the kind of regulations around data privacy. And if you don't adhere to them, you can get major fines. I think some of them it's like 2% of your company income, which can be massive if you're with multi-million pound companies. And this is not just actually in the European Union, it started extended even to the United States, which might be a bit surprising when I first did research around this. You now have rules in California, in all different states like Texas, and it's all about data privacy and what's being done with your actual data, your name, your date of birth, etc. And then finally, there's also worries over data governance. Data governance is who has access to that data and what they do with it. You may have read in the news, there's a few things like, for instance, if, this is quite out there, but if on the gay app Grindr and you put in that you're HIV positive, that data might be mined and etc. I know there's been concerns around that. Or also if you're looking at women and they put in their data about their menstrual cycles, how is that data being mined? Will that be mined 5 to 10 years about your health insurance and etc. So there's a lot of concerns about what's happening to your data and your personal information. So again, I was just going on about the government rules increasing, so is in this country and also worldwide. So Google has actually been under the scrutiny of GDPR regulations. I think it was back in 2020, it was called Schism 2. It was like a ruling, and it was about how data is being processed on, you might have Google Analytics in Germany, but how that data is actually going all over to America and how it's being processed on their servers. So there was rules around that. And this time last year, I was working for some big pharmacy companies, and they, in their European territory, stopped using Google Analytics because of things like this. And they actually moved to Matomo Analytics instead because they're a lot better with privacy and ownership. You also have to be a bit more transparent with advertising with the Digital Services Act. That's also come into impact in the last few years. And then, as I stated earlier, there's a lot of changing US state privacy policies, the main one being one in California, the CCPA, and there's also in Texas, in Nevada, etc., all coming together about how your data is being used. So I've said a lot of things about governance and data and user, but you might think, like, who actually gives a shit? Like, do you give a shit? You're getting a free service through maybe Facebook, through an app, etc. Or you might be running a business and think, well, I don't really care. But there was actually a study by McKinsey that actually said a vast majority of customers would actually stop doing business with a company that would give away their data, their sensitive personal data without permission. So if you do have clients, if you're like a freelancer or you're a small business, it is actually important how you store that data and what you do with it. And it's also, you're almost not predicting, you can potentially stop issues in the future that could turn into an absolute shitstorm. So if you're my age, I'm 36, if you remember Ashley Madsen, it's the website that you could have extramarital affairs on, and there was a data breach there, and there was a lot of information that came out. So if you were suspicious as a partner, you could probably dig up information on that. So that's an example of a very bad data breach and a company that wasn't very good with keeping that information under lock and key. So why Matomo? I myself actually put Matomo on my website. So my website is just a .com. It's built on Squarespace. Did it myself. Squarespace is quite easy to obviously navigate. And I don't have a vast amount of traffic, but I did use Matomo on my website to kind of go through this presentation as well. So you heard the analogy of David and Goliath. So that's why there's pebbles, because he killed David with the pebbles. So there's 5 points on this. So why Matomo? You get full data ownership. So whether you're 5 people in your business or you're 5 million, you get full data ownership. It adheres to the GDPR rules, and also that's the California Consumer, I think, Protection Act. So it is also data compliant. So whether you are working with a business that might be in a certain state in the United States, or if you're in Germany or Italy or France, and you can actually control the security and the storage. You have a much more enhanced data governance because you can also like not hack it, but it's open source. So if you want to put it on your own servers, it's much more flexible in terms of the customization of it. You can really make it bespoke to your own business model. And then finally, it does offer behavior data. It does have reports, insights, it has API usage. So if you are using an analytics package and you need to drag that data and put it into different data visualization tools, maybe that could be Looker, that could be Power BI, so on and so forth. And then if these reasons aren't good enough, we have major companies and organizations that actually do use it. So the United Nations uses it. And also you have search engine optimization sites such as Majestic. They also use it on their website. So how does it work? How it works is data is collected via a JavaScript tracker, and it doesn't use tracking cookies and does not access log files on your server. So in the last few years, there's been a lot of concerns about third-party data, and a lot of analytics tools actually rely on that. So there's been a lot of work in marketing departments around how are we actually going to look at user behavior. Matomo does not rely on these. It relies on these ways of getting out the data. It's mainly through like the browsers and things like that. So this next slide actually says about that. So the Universal Device Detection Library, it detects what the browser is, the operating system, and the device. So this is how it fundamentally works. And some data is stored in first-party cookies and then collected. So you have that permission from your users. So how do you install it into your environment? So this is where it comes up with it's more customizable. So you have three options. You have cloud, you have on-premise, and then you also have content management system. I myself did it via the cloud option, just for my small website, but I could have actually done it with a plugin with the content management system. The on-premise one is probably the most interesting because it's free without many stipulations. Like there's not data sampling, there's no cost, you own that data as well. And that's because this company was birthed out of being good. Like I said, Matomo means honesty. It's about actually treating users and with their best interests at heart, with data privacy, but it's open source, so that's why a lot of it is free, and it's not really there. It does make a profit, obviously, but it's not as Google Analytics is. If anyone's ever studied Google Analytics, there's a big emphasis on Google Ads because they want you to spend money and continue to spend money. Google Analytics itself is incredibly expensive as well. I think per year it can go up to over 100 grand. So if you're not utilizing it, it's a large amount of money to pay. So on the cloud, you can see it's very simplistic. You know, you'll start up, you'll just sign up on the website. They give you the JavaScript tracking code, so you'd copy and paste that, and you'd put that into the hard code of your website. And then what you would then have is you can access a user interface where you can see bar charts, different data points. And this is actually, you can customize this. So these widgets you can kind of drag and drop to what's actually important to your business. So if you're actually, you just write a blog, so you'll want to understand maybe scroll depth, maybe time on the page. But then if you're an e-commerce business, you might want to understand the kind of user journey going through from putting something in their basket to actually purchasing it. So you can make that bespoke to your business model. So this one's the actual paid version. So I had this for 6 months. It was £20 per month, and you do get the full control and data ownership. You also get the maintenance, security, backups, and updates, and it can track and host for you. There is information online as well how to do this, which is quite good because Google also does offer this kind of service where you can get instructional guidance on how to utilize it. This one's a bit more interesting. The second one is on-premise, self-hosted. So what you'll have to do here is if you have to have access to your servers, so you would involve like FileZilla, having access to your MySQL databases, creating a super user, accessing your website, then eventually you will also be given a tracking code, which will then present you with the identical interface that I've just stated before for cloud. Now, what's great about this is it's free to download, there's no data limits, there's no cost. It does have guidance in the different installations, Linux and also Windows servers. And also there's more resources online. And actually it did say 10% of the world's top 10,000 websites do use this for the analytics. This is from their website though, they didn't actually state which websites these were, so I couldn't put that in here. And then finally, content management systems. So again, there's a lot of websites that still are on these different CMSs such as Squarespace, GoDaddy, Drupal, Wix. I mean, my website is on Squarespace. But what you can do here is you have an automatic plugin, which is so much easier. So you just go into here when you're on your own website domain, and then you can go through and it will just give you simplistic steps to then give you the user interface again. So I'm just going to quickly run through the final points. Again, you do have to pay for this. What's it like? What are the pros and what are the cons? Now, some people might say this user interface is a pro because it is flexible, it's very simplistic. Some people hate it and say it's way too 1990s, it's just not nice to look at, but I put it in both because some people do like it, some people don't. Secondly, if you've ever used Adobe Analytics, this is very similar to Adobe Analytics. This is like a user navigation. So as you can see here, this would be like my website, the drop-off points, but where people actually navigate to throughout that user journey. So that's actually great information to have because you can then look at pain points for your users and try and fix them. You can also optimize good pages that are working well and learn from that. And then finally, you do have all different stats here, pulling out the channel types, and there's a wealth of data available essentially. So even better is, I mean, considering this is £20 a month, you can actually set up A/B tests, which you would usually pay a lot more money to do. Heat maps, there's like companies such as SessionCam, you have to pay for heat maps, and you can also look at session recordings, so you can actually look at how your users will interact with your website and the pain points they're going through. So the 3 pros are wealth of data at your fingertips. It's very flexible. Again, you can make the user interface very bespoke to what you want, and there's an incredible array of additional functionality. But what are the cons? The user interface. So last year I had a client, she was a big pharma client, she absolutely hated it. Absolutely hated it. So if you're working with people that are, quite high up in the food chain in terms of, decision makers, etc., they might not be as warm to something like this, and you would have to probably work quite hard to try and sell this into usage. It was used in a lot of the European territories purely because of legalities, and they had to almost take it on. It does have a wealth of data, but when I tried to export it, it was absolutely awful. Like you can see here, it coming out. So if you're actually trying to export that data and put that into this could be very basic if it was into Google Sheets and then plugging it into a dashboard, absolutely awful. Loads of manual workarounds, just additional time, potential additional errors. So I think this is quite like a bad point of it, whereas in Google Analytics, it's quite easy to download the data. And then finally, it's actually education. Google Analytics does have about 94% of the market worldwide. People are very comfortable with it. It's very ingrained in organizations. So the education around Matomo is going to be quite massive in terms of having to upsell it or having to say, actually, this is how you use it. It's not the same as what you used to use. But then on the flip side, Google Analytics 4 has come in the last 2 years, and it's caused a lot of challenges in the industry, and that itself has actually required quite a lot of education. So again, I'm like, why did I put this in? This is the world is changing in terms of how we're actually looking at the analytics packages. So what we can see here is this is actually Google's share of voice, and then a lot of websites that just don't have any. Others are Matomo. So Matomo is actually growing. So this is 2024, but in 2023, Matomo had only 1.3% of the market. So it is growing. It's very, very small, and it's incremental changes, but who knows what that will look like in, say, 5 years. So is Matomo the future? So my question to you guys is, does Matomo have a shot at challenging Google? I will say I wasn't paid by Matomo for this talk. I've had people ask me that before, and I wasn't. It was just exploring a different analytics package rather than just Google and looking at Google. And so that's the end of the presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. If you don't want to ask in front of everyone, I'm happy for you to come up to me at the end. And that's it.